So now we are going to start with a very interesting panel discussion. I'm delighted to have a very diverse talent with me. I have the stalwart from the structural fraternity, I have a stalwart from the facade engineering fraternity, and I have two of my buddies, architects, who are going to also talk from a designer's perspective. So let me invite each one of them on dais. I'm not going to take time to introduce them because they are all who's who. I would utilize that time in having a dialogue with them. So let me first call Mr. Achyut Watve. All of you know that he's been in this industry for last more than 4 decades, and his action speaks louder than the word. The practice that he has grown along with Umesh Joshi is very, very well known. Then I would like to call upon another stalwart from the facade industry, Mr. KR Suresh, who heads Axis Facades, and really he has got so many wonderful engineering and the facade expertise to us as a designer, and he's making our dreams come true. So thank you, Suresh, for being here with us. Then I would call Soyuz Talib. He's a second generation architect, is quite well known for many of his iconic buildings, and he's from Navi Mumbai, so he'll be throwing some more light as his contribution in Navi Mumbai. Thank you, Soyuz, for being here. And I have a wonderful couple, Saurabh and Lakshmi. So Saurabh I'm going to call. Their company's name is Skyline Architecture. Again, many of their iconic buildings speak itself about their talent. So I'm very, very happy to have my 4 panelists here. The topic is on a high-rise and facades. Now we talked about how important and how inevitable is the high-rise and high-density construction in our metropolis and megapolis. And today when we see that India is on that transitional stage where 2.5 times of what is already built environment is going to get built. So India is totally different on the world's map. All the developed countries have already built, and we are in the transitional mode where we are going to build 2.5 times. So all the young architects and all the young engineers here, it's the best time for you to have for next 1.5 to 2 decades. So, but as I said, I tried to say in my presentation, we need to be very sensible. And how sensible that we can be, that's what we are going to touch in next 45 minutes. It's going to be a thought-provoking decision. So let me begin with Saurabh. So, you know, everything starts at architect's office. The client walks into an architect's office. Client always comes with the wish and a wisdom. He never comes with a detailed design program. And he depends on an architect and his expertise and talent and the maturity to develop the entire journey of architecture. And as you know, any building that we are trying to do in Mumbai, minimum it goes above 40 story or 45 story for simple number things. So what do you think, or what would you like to guide as a principal key features that an architect should follow when you start your initiative as a design, especially for the high density, high-rise structures, and especially focusing on humanizing the high-rise structures?
Thank you, Sandeep. First of all, I must say that I just saw a beautiful presentation from your team. And all the projects were very stunning. And I think you have covered quite a lot of points, which I was thinking. But anyway, generally when a client comes to us, our first starting point is that we try to see the urban context of that plot, because in Mumbai, you know, we have very congested areas, plots where to be developed, which has very narrow lanes. Sometimes the roads are not widened enough, and there are tall buildings all around. So we try to see the urban context. What is the site and its surroundings? What are the buildings which are in our neighborhood? How tall are they? How close are they from our plot? So if we plan something over here, where should we place our building? What should be the wind flow? From where the wind should come? What should be the solar angles? How the light will be traveling throughout the day? So once we have done those kind of studies, we come to a conclusion where we can place our blocks, the massing of the building. Then second study we do is of the traffic. What is the traffic which is surrounding our plot? You know, generally we just think about developing our plot, But when we are designing something on an urban context, on a high density area, we should also see which are the adjoining roads, how we can connect one road with another through our plot. So how we can make that access more, more easy and transition more free. So that is one thing we study, and then we decide where should be our entry and where should be our exit, so that there is not too much of load on the main road, because when we are developing, we are obviously making the density of that plot twice or thrice. So that many more number of cars are going to come out of that plot. So that's why entry and exit to the plot is very important to decongest that area. So now when we have arrived into these kind of studies, we start with generally we start with the massing of the building. Looking at the FSI and other calculations, how tall a building would be, where it is going to be placed. We like to see that the building that we design is not very slender. The building block structurally, because tall buildings, a structure plays a very, very important, crucial role. The structure has to be very well defined. So the core becomes very important, looking at the traffic, vertical traffic number, the cores, the number of lifts, number of staircases. So how we can put the core in the building so that it is well placed in the center, connecting the other part of the design floor. So that core becomes very important. Then comes our the planning part. Obviously, an efficient planning as per the client's requirement is done, keeping in mind the maximum flexibility, because in Mumbai, when we get a plot, generally it's a kind of a mixed-use kind of a plot, wherein lower floors are commercial, then we have parking floors, then some amenity floors are there, then residential is there. So and residential also, most of the time, the client wants many variations. So the structural design has to be very flexible, so that it can take all these different kind of functions. So what we try to do is a very strong core, which is joining the entire floor plate, is thought of first. Then the column grid is, like Sandeep was also explaining, generally we try to see that the columns are more in the periphery, So we get a nice floor plate inside, which is columnless and beamless. So even if the client has different requirements, it's very easy to do. So once we have derived all these things about the building form, the building planning, we come back again to the ground floor, wherein the traffic circulation in and out inside the building is well thought of for a easy and comfortable drive. A fire brigade movements, which is very important. The fire safety is important. So that is thought of how the fire brigade is going to go all around the building. Each and every corner should be accessible in case of an emergency. So these are the things. Then once this is designed, then services come. So depending upon the floor plates, generally we recommend 1 or 2 service floors with some brake pressure tanks and booster pumps, etc. So that, on the upper floor, in case of emergency also, the second or the third pump is working to throw water on the upper floors. So these kind of services is very important. Then once we have a fair idea about the building, we start planning the facade, which is generally taken to complement the surroundings. Whatever is the surrounding, it should be complement that area, and with some historical context of that area, and also to create a good skyline that facade is considered. And we try to select materials which are more environmental friendly, having good performance of glass, or some materials which are eco-friendly and all. So these are some of the things that we consider while we are doing that process of designing.
Great. So nicely explained by Saurabh. It reflects his experience in a high-rise, because these are all guidelines are very important. You cannot think about your build structure in isolation. One of the points which he mentioned is so important. I'm not looking at my building. If my building can be lifted, and if I can allow the other plot owners to go through my building, I'm going to give it back to the community. I think now we have to think as a precinct and not as an isolated plot, because we are densifying our urban fabric. And if we start looking it into an isolation pockets, it's not going to work. If you'll see everywhere else, they have more inclusiveness to the extent that they don't have a compound wall. You know, that's actually allows that porosity, that bonding, that friendship between the people. So it's so important. Somebody has said the land belongs to a city and the FSI belongs to a developer. So if architects can start thinking, lifting their structures, allowing that porosity for the cycling path or for a people to meander around, that's going to be very great. Contextuality, what he mentioned, that you have to respect, because city has so many years of history, and you cannot just impose some of your obsessive iconicities, but see what people want, functionality giving. Because today when we were interviewing 6 different housewives, all 6 different housewives said 6 different things for their kitchen. One said, I want my kitchen to be air conditioned. One said, I want television in my kitchen. One said, I want to see the sky, otherwise I feel claustrophobic. So as an architect, we have to give a very flexible floor plate so that people can customize their house as per their need. And today's millenniums, they have a very, very different ideas to create their own houses. So thank you, Saurabh. I think these were a very, very important thing. Flexibility in a high-rise, high-density structure is very, very important, because lifestyle is dramatically changing every 5 years, and it will keep on changing. If you give something rigid framework, it's not going to work. Thank you very much for that wonderful insight. I go to another architect, Soyuz. Being one of the renowned architects from Navi Mumbai, there are so many buildings he has in Navi Mumbai, with many high-rise structures in your portfolio. Do you feel growing high-rise is a need or a greed in your city? There are alternative solutions that you feel can be addressed for a rapid urbanization besides what has been followed in a megapolis?
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. One of the things that you need to take into consideration while you're doing this is understand the facts first. So if you look at what's happened in Navi Mumbai was a satellite city that was developed around 60 years back now. So it's had a very short history. Navi Mumbai was planned for a population of 40 lakh odd people. And what's happened in a short span of 60 years, we've almost reached half that population already, and we are increasing the population at a very, very fast rate. Just to draw a comparison, in the past decade itself, the population of Navi Mumbai has grown by 86% as compared to probably suburban Mumbai, which has grown at the rate of 8%. So if you look at the speed of growth, that has been enormous in our city. Besides which, we have been attacked by a tsunami of FSI, which has come from the changes in the bylaws. We've got the new UDCPR in, the FSI has shot up to 5.6. So a satellite town which was kind of envisioned to be this low-rise, low-density town has suddenly become this town which is going to have high-rise, high-density situations. And we've been working all these years trying to accommodate this particular thing from that perspective. So I don't think there is it's not a greed, it's a need of the situation where we need to actually sit down and start thinking vertically and try to accommodate the needs of the people. But ironically, the problem that is occurring is, people say that the minute the FSI goes up, the price of housing is going to go down, and probably we are going to be facing a situation where things are going to become cheaper, but that's not true, because the minute the FSI increases, the price of land goes up, and the cost of construction goes up parallelly, because what happens is, what was now a 15-story building is now becoming 30 stories. What was 30 stories is becoming 50 stories, and things keep moving in the northward direction. So we are not in control of the cost of construction. We are not in control of the cost of land. So what happens is the people who are living in a satellite town are suddenly experiencing an upsurge in the prices of the apartments that they're going to live in. So that's where there is a challenge. So those are the challenges that we need to meet. Need, yes; greed, no. But there is no solution. Like you said, do you have an alternative to this? No, we don't, because when we look at alternatives, alternatives can only come down when government regulations change and things like that change from an upper level downward. So those things, I mean, those are ifs and buts. I mean, I don't think there are alternative viabilities right now.
That's exactly what I wanted to extract out of him. So you can see now how the pressure is building, you know. Once the megapolis develops, automatically the satellite town, automatically the surroundings also has that peer pressure, because people want to come to the urban context from the rural context. In our country, they are saying there is going to be a paradigm shift in next 1 decade, that all the rural population would want to be in urban areas naturally, because everybody wants a growth, everybody wants to be a place where it's happening. So it's not a greed, it's a need. And collectively, we all have to be very well composed to ensure that we create something that is enjoyable, that is sustainable, you know. And lot needs to be discussed, needs to be researched, and most importantly, we have to work together with our engineering and our technology experts, you know. That's something that I would like to advocate to the young minds. Thank you, Soyuz. I will go now to Watve. I mean, in structural field, he is a god, or I would say he's a word. He has seen the transition from low rise to mid rise to high mid rise to high rise. So my question to you, Achyut, is as one of the stalwart in structural fraternity, you have a wealth of established practice. Kindly elaborate on your insights on high-rise structures, challenges and opportunities, and what message would you like to give to everyone here who are architects, who are the technology providers and engineers, especially focusing on high-rise structures?
Hello, good afternoon. Don't make me God, because nowadays God is only to pray, and whatever we want to do, we can do it. So that's the easiest way to make anybody God.
That's what we do with you always.
Yes. So basically what is happening, I am listening, Sandeep also, then Saurabh also, we are working together for last so many years together. You know, these people dreaming, but actually what is happening on the ground has to be done by us. And what we are doing right now, you know, codes are changing every day. And nowadays, what our feeling is with UDCPR or increasing in FSI and everything, you know, entire planning of architecture is FSI driven. That is what we call. It's basically FSI driven. And they want to have FSI. The building which can go up to 10 story, we say that yes, it is possible to go 10 story. And, you know, in a small area, they say no, but I want to make it 50 story. And that is what is happening nowadays. So basically somewhere down the line, you know, we have to design, and somewhere we have to declare this particular plot is not buildable for this much height. You cannot consume FSI in this particular building. But they say ARP lagega, ARP ko jao. Anything they are ready to do, because price of the FSI is very high. So everybody wants to do it. And then, you know, Sandeep is very lucky. Saurabh also in some way is very lucky. They get so big a plot, they can do everything. They can fulfill their dream. But see some other architects, they are getting, yes, I can say, the architects, they don't get anything. And they want to build it 60-story building. How one can design a 60-story building when your width of the building is not more than 10 meters or 12 meters? Another area, you know, Saurabh said, ki, yes, it is possible. He gets the project, then he decides score, then he calculates the vertical and all the thing, and he will consult structural engineer. But you can feel, or you can tell me exactly, is your core is designed for architecture, structural nature, or it has been designed for what I can get it free of FSI? All the course what we are getting is lift ke samne 1.5 guna extra milta hai. And that's my problem. And all cores are designed like this. Cores are placed where you can consume the FSI, and not area which is, you know, road, seaside or something. So normally we get in Bombay especially, where we are facing the sea, we are getting eccentric cores. So building is stiff on one side and moving in other side. When we are designing a tall structure, it is to be distributed and my stiffness has to be distributed. First mode, second mode, and then torsion come into the picture. So we have to think for this. Eccentric core, one can design it. One can design it eccentric core also. The, good example or bad example, I should say, what we are designing it for the 42. You can go to the site, which is having a basically 265 meter tall building and having an aspect ratio in the range of 11 with, eccentric core and total flexibility, core and peripheral columns. I don't know when code committee has visited all these areas after this Kohinoor also and all the thing. Now they are asking us, strong core and peripheral columns is not accepted. I'm giving you this. Now code is saying that strong core and peripheral columns are not accepted. Gravity column, yes. Problem is like this, they want to have shear walls in all the direction on periphery also. This is the new condition. So basically what is happening, architects are fixed with the FSI, structural consultants are fixed with the code. So we have to find out and then we have to sit together and then finalize what is to be done. And somewhere we have to accept that we cannot build this particular building.
I mean, so well said. I mean, if you have heard him carefully, he's actually talking out of his practical experience that the driving forces sometimes are different and what is logical and rational is different. So I again feel that the time has come, and I fully agree with him, that everything should not be FSI driven. The solution has to be driven from the sustainability point of view. Because if you try, we also tell our clients, if you try to reach that number, maybe we'll create something which will not be sustainable and it will be difficult to sell. Instead of that, let's create 20% less, but let's create of something which is good so it can be sold at a premium rate. So at the end of the day, the profit can be earned by creating less but of a great quality or creating more with a more challenging risk. And I am sure many of the clients, they understand this. And today, especially in last 2-3 years, I am seeing many of our projects where we are not able to consume the full FSI. We are also giving the fungible FSI in the core by convincing our client that this is more sustainable and they are agreeing to it. So I think again, it's a collective responsibility to explain the decision maker a right and a judicious things, and it works.
That's why we call you lucky.
No, it's not question of lucky. Watve, this is something which is very logical. And this is where the dialogue is very important. As you are very correctly said, if you are just running after saving that fungible FSI and if your core becomes more inefficient, it doesn't make sense. So only thing that in a limited time I want to bring it to your notice, as an architect, you should strive for that dialogue before the concept is finalized. And I'm very sure that every client listens. It's up to us, how do we explain it to him? Okay, coming to Suresh, now you have been designing so many commercial buildings, mixed-use buildings, tech campuses, but my question is more focused on residential buildings. We are in a tropical environment, and residential buildings are going taller, so there has to be a solution which has to be case-specific. How do you personally see that we can balance a good engineering solution which has got a good life cycle, because life cycle for envelope is important, and which is also conducive to the tropical environment, where people like natural ventilation, people like openable window panes. So what do you think that you would like to guide if I give you a free ground and say, okay, for this building, you give me a guideline and I design it accordingly, not that I design and I make you engineer it accordingly. Please.
Thank you. Good afternoon. I think it's a trick question, first of all. Architects design curtain wall all over, and then we get, some people saying tropical climate, you should not use glass. Many questions. But what we feel is that, in a tropical country, there are advantages and disadvantages, which are basically to do with the advantages. You have more light, but in the bargain, you have more glare also. You need to control that. Then you've got more rain, you've got more moisture. Humidity levels are high. So ventilating a facade is what is the key, what we need to think of. And looking at a high-rise building, I feel it's more to do with, not only sustainability, it's to do with the aging of the building. What happens after 10 years, 15 years? You won't be able to replace any element in the high-rise because it's going to be very expensive to disband, degrade, and if it degrades, you know. So I think the right choice is to use the right material first. So as an architect, I know that they come up with different options, but as a consultant, I think what we need to look at is the life cycle cost of that, plus the aging part, whether it's the right material for the building in per se. So we see a lot of buildings with ACP, aluminum sheet cladding for a residential building, which we say that, you know, it should be a rain screen, it should be open joints, it should not have silicon. So it basically, if you seal the cladding, it basically doesn't age over time. Over time, you start seeing the difference. Like, perfect example is Taj Wellington Mews. It's a service apartment, but if you look at it, it's an open joint. So it remains clean. So there are no streaking, there are no joint issues and all that stuff. Similarly with I would say that high-rise should have a permanent finish. It should not have rendered finish because you can't do anything later. So you can't paint the building, like if it's a 300-meter building or a 260-meter building, you can't paint the building. It's very difficult. So you have a permanent finish, but that permanent finish has to be something which is durable, which is considering the fire norms. We need to look at all that. Considering the acoustic properties, the R value and all that stuff. So I think as a consultant, we would look at it in that part.
Little difficult question. If me, Soyuz or Saurabh comes to you, and we put two different approach for the envelope. One approach is a seamless curtain wall, like I showed for one of my project. And other approach is very conventional, where we have a deep chajjas, the architectural projections which are 1 meter or a 0.75 meter or 1.2 meter out, and we have a window wall system, which is going again from floor to ceiling. Which one would you recommend and why?
So if it is a high-rise...
Residential, I'm talking about
right.
residential.
Residential, if it is a high-rise, I would basically look at whether you're giving, you know, everybody wants a window nowadays. Everybody wants a balcony in a high-rise in India. Abroad, you don't have that. But then abroad, it's all centrally air-conditioned. Here you talk about VRV, you talk of many other aspects. So there are two challenges here. When you go for a centrally air-conditioned, it's an advantage because your building is cooled by the centrally air-conditioned space. Otherwise, when you have individual outdoor units, you always have a challenge that if it is a curtain wall, and if you have a high-performance glass, your room inside space becomes very hot in the daytime because you're not using the air conditioning in the daytime because people are going to work. So your heat is coming in, but it can't go out because of the coating. So what we do generally is we talk about ventilation. So either it could be a sliding window or it could be a smart card where you on the air conditioning before you leave your office and it cools the space. So I think curtain wall, it becomes a light structure. But a window wall, you can have an issue later in terms of leakages if you're having a into-in glazing because you have joints. The joints are the weakest spot in a curtain wall. So I would say a unitized curtain wall or a curtain wall which is floor to floor is the best option, I would say, for a high-rise, just for a high-rise.
True. Yeah, so this is again very interesting, and I think a lot of time needs to be given before we commit ourselves for any visual perception of the building, because again, very nicely explained by him, it will change based on your building, how close it to the coastal front, what is the wind speed and so on. So there is no generic solution. A lot of time people come with a generic mindset, ki mujhe aisa hi chahiye. That was working in past, but today with the technology growing, we have to be open-minded to see how technology can help us. And these are the technology inventors. They work 24/7, 365 days in their space of that facade engineering. So we need to unwind, unlearn what we have learned in past and look at the newer things that will come. Like see what he said, if you have observed it carefully, that unitized curtain wall has an advantage because it has a very state-of-art kind of a connection. Window wall where there are 2 to 3 materials come together. So there are challenges and opportunities in every system. It will suit case-wise. What only I am trying to draw here is that there is no generic one solution. The solution is very case-specific. The solution will be driven by the context and various other factors. That is very important.
And also the customer requirement. I think in India we are facing that challenge that everybody wants a window. I wouldn't put a window because your hardware doesn't have a warranty for more than 5 years.
True.
So what happens when you are having a high rise for a 50-year period? It's going to, one day it's going to damage. A maid opens the window and doesn't close it, the whole window can come off the building.
Agreed, agreed. And I would like to continue with you because we are on topic. How would you educate people about the life cycle analysis? I'm coming on that question to Watve
Right.
also because people will put it today.
Right.
But whatever you put it today has to be there for next 50, 60, 80 years.
Right.
Is there a system in the market which is parallelly developed where such high-end envelope systems can be maintained perpetually?
So there are two things. One is a cladding material and one is a window wall. So in a curtain wall, generally what happens is if you have a fixed, there is no window or anything, I don't think there's any issue with the curtain wall part. When you have anything to do with the hardware, that is when the challenge comes in. So a 50-year period, nothing is going to sustain. You need to maintain it. So what we say is every 10 years it has to be maintained. There has to be some inspection happening and you check and then you rectify the areas because all windows won't get spoiled in 10 years. Maybe particular window which has been used or something like that. So I think every 10-year period you need to keep on checking and re-maintaining the whole thing. So there should be some program in the operation manual of the builder, developer, saying that, these are the things we need to do. And every 10 years somebody has to inspect the building and confirm, like a structural check. But for facades it has to be more, it has to be less because it's more important that you don't have a life safety issue.
True. So in our country, our first cycle is getting over now. What I'm trying to say, the first cycle of the tall buildings are now in operational stage, and we will come to know the teething issues after 3-4 years. Because we are going through that phase now where these tall buildings are commissioned, handed over, and are occupied. The real story will be unveiled after 3 to 4 years, and we all have to be ready for it because I personally feel there's going to be a huge quest, as I said, to ensure that all that we have designed has to remain the way it is designed and it functions the way it is designed. So again,
This one, especially because it's a coastal belt, so generally what happens is all the buildings which are done with cladding is with a mild steel or a hot dip galvanized substructure. So what we have seen is when we started due diligence for certain buildings, you start seeing the corrosion in the steel and you need to actually replace everything. But you don't see it offhand unless you see specimen areas. So as a developer, I think you need to look at that in terms of, checking it every 5 years. Just check one panel you remove and see whether there's a problem.
So I would strongly recommend you to include that in a DBR. So when we prepare a design-based report, we restrict ourselves only to the project commissioning. We were talking about what is architecture after architect. We all complete the project and we walk away. I mean, I have no hesitation in confessing also that we don't really go back and see how my building is behaving, which I had designed 5 years back, which we used to do it in earlier times.
And which you're committed for 50 years.
Yes. So I think again a take home for everybody, when you prepare a design-based report, you need to also talk about the life cycle analysis of that building. How is it going to behave after 10 years and what is the care and budget that client should keep to ensure that it will function the same way. I tell all the high-rise people, please have a healthy corpus because you are going to spend at least 5% of the capital cost every 5 years. And if that time you feel struggle, then you are going to be in trouble. So start putting that money aside to make sure that you have got a Rolls Royce, but Rolls Royce has to run like a Rolls Royce throughout the life cycle. So same question to Watve, which we were discussing pre this session. These bridges, these cantilever iconic features, how do you see that they will sustain?
When you're talking about life cycle, these are some specific elements what we are talking. Is, large decks supported on structural steel, then cantilevers and all the thing. The basic problem is, when you are talking about life cycle, for high-rise building internationally, there is one system called health monitoring of the building. As we do health monitoring of person, you are going to die. Building is not going to die. It, sustain lot of abuses what you do, but ultimately someday it is going to have a problem. But till such time it will sustain. In our case, when we are doing a high-rise building, we have to include right from day one the health monitoring system. Now with sensors and all the thing and advanced engineering, We have health monitoring system. You know, building management system is there. We have to do that, put some sensor where leakages are going to happen. The person who is there from the first point of leakage, he can know. Where my corrosion is going to there, he can check it. When there is a, cathodic protection, you can do it for the areas which is, on the river seaside. Basically the tall building which, we have done it long time back, say 10, 15 years. And today crown is totally rusting. Totally rusting. And you see a phase where the seaside is totally rusting, other side is absolutely fine. It's a 8 mm plate, now it has become only 1 mm plate. It has rusted totally. So basically, one thing is there, we have to go for anti-corrosion and all this method, which is health monitoring in advance, like we take a vitamin and all the things. And second thing is regular maintenance. We have to do maintenance. Basically, nobody, your father will not take guarantee, my boy will, live for 70 years. You have to do your exercise, you have to eat normally and like this. When an architect and structural consultant design a building, he cannot take a guarantee for 70 years or 50 years for high-rise building also. So we have to do a proper maintenance, and if there is any problem, a kharoj aage, you have to make it immediately rectify that. And that is one basic thing. And then your life cycle will be there. Otherwise, practically, it is not impossible. My basic RCC element is, I cannot make it crack-proof. Basically, structure is with the crack. So we will go inside, see that carbonation level, and if that carbonation level is high, you have to treat it. But before that, if you do it under the cathodic protection or something, you can see that your reinforcement will be protected, so it will not burst and your cracking will not be there and acceleration in corrosion will not be there.
I have one question for Watve, Mr. Watve. See, just now you said that steel is corroding, but I have seen some of the bridges which were made in British time, 100 years ago, steel bridges and all. I don't think after they went away, the maintenance was done for those bridges. So what kind of materials they used to use, but that these kind of steel bridges could sustain for 100 years and still they are, as strong. We are, they have said that the guarantee is over, but we are still using them.
Good question. But Saurabh, basically all these buildings are basically gravity driven. And my sizes is necessarily for gravity and loads are taken. When we started practicing, say 45, 46 years back, I was getting M150 concrete and everybody was getting 150 concrete. A good concrete is M20. But M20 I was putting 8.2 bags of concrete. Now for M60 we are putting that kind of thing. My sections are become lighter and lighter and lighter. At that time my minimum percentage was in the range of 0.8% in any concrete element. Now we are easily going 3 to 4%. So more this, building is in a stress condition, smaller the elements, you will get this problem. Because building is already under stress. Yes, it is livable, it is safe and stable, but it is under stress.
True. So how many of architects are here? Please raise your hands. Great. We have quite a few architects here. So there is something called POE. Have you heard of POE? POE is what we said now is a post-occupation evaluation. So it's a new industry growing where there are professional institutes are there who check the health of the building the way we check the health of ourselves. So this is a new emerging science where, as correctly said by Watve, the health of your core and shell, the health of your envelope, health of your MEP will be checked and you will be given a certificate. You are in a category or a B category or C category, similar to what we do a health checkup, check our blood sugar, check our cardio parameters and so on. So this is something which is very important and every architect should know about it. That's how the insurance of the building, that's how the premiumness of the building, especially in a public buildings, it's going to become mandatory to check because you need to know the hospital where I'm going, how safe it is from the fire safety point of view, etc.
Sandeep, one thing, basically for any high-rise building, health monitoring system right at the construction time should be made compulsory.
Yes, it is going to
And-
become mandatory very
No,
soon.
but it is not yet.
It is going to become
I
mandatory.
don't know when it will be. It has to come in a bylaws of DC rule. Then it will be made compulsory. Otherwise, no architect or no builder is going
I
to
agree with
accept
you.
it.
Everything
It
has
is
to
to
come
be
from-
part of the DC rule, and that is the only language our people understand.
I agree with you. So together we have to ensure that it comes in regulatory code. It's in everybody's interest. Many of the times we are focusing only till the project completes, but we need to see, especially the high-rise structure, how it behaves afterwards. Okay, now I come to my architect friends. My question to Saurabh: when now we design a high-rise, I'm again focusing on largely residential building and also on commercial building. Do you think the design program is changing? For example, post-COVID, people are asking for balconies. People are now also respecting the terraces, even if it is going out of FSI. Even for the office building, people are asking for the sky, relaxation, breakout spaces. So do you see any change in the design program, especially focusing on the human element? Share some of your experiences with some projects and what do you think?
See, the most important thing that we have observed post-COVID is that people have suddenly started asking for bigger flats in South Mumbai, at least I know. So because they want that, earlier it used to be 1 BHK, 2 BHK. Now the 2 BHK guy wants 2.5 BHK or a 3 BHK or a compact size, but more number of rooms, so that they can work from home itself. So that work from home culture is, driving the sales these days now. Also, now even the corporation is considering that right now we get 2% as a this thing, health club and all those things, amenity area. They are planning to make it twice. They are planning to make it 4%. So that is all because people want to have all the amenities in the building itself. They don't want to go out and mix with the crowd or mix with the strangers, go to the clubs. So if it is in their own community, is better. So those kind of things are, the self-sufficient buildings, I would say, that kind of a planning people are preferring more, and there is a more demand for those kind of buildings.
I fully agree. The sizes of the apartments are going up, and many of the people, they were literally shaken who were in a rented premises. So you will see in affordable housing, the demand has gone up. People are realizing that if I'm going to Mumbai or Navi Mumbai or Thane to work, however small, but I should have my own house. Otherwise, one fine day, I have to just go back to my village is also going to become tough. So these are the newer things which are happening. That is again pushing the urbanization to the next level and so on. So question to Soyuz. If I make you a municipal commissioner of Navi Mumbai, what are the 2 to 3 changes that you'll suggest to make your life much more simpler, better?
Well, you're asking this from a high-rise point of view, or?
Yes, purely high-rise point of view. And you can touch upon other aspects also.
No, it takes some time to imagine that I'll become the municipal commissioner. But
This is
yeah,
only
so-
a dream question. Nobody is going to make you really.
No. So I think I have been over the years. We've spent almost 20 years working in 25 years working in New Bombay now, and we've been in constant interaction with the authorities on the approval fronts and things like that. But more than probably the municipal commissioner bringing about change, I think the change needs to come from the policy makers. People who are drafting the big thick books that we refer to when we are looking at regulations and what needs to change and what the codes that keep changing, or probably the kind of regulations that keep changing for our building projects. There have been changes that have occurred. We had the DCR, which was there a few years back. Now we've got the UDCPR. But the problem is that, one of the things I wanted to mention earlier also, I'd like to mention that now that, you increase this FSI to a phenomenal extent, and you expect prices to go down. I mean, it's like an open buffet that is given, and you can say that, okay, you want to eat how much ever you want to eat, you eat. But the problem is not that everybody wants to say, ki, I ate 2 chapatis and rice and I'm satisfied. Most of the people want to overeat and have a bad stomach at the end of the day. That's what happens when you're given excess of FSI and excess of everything. So I think in terms of regulation, there needs to be a lot of control. In terms of, like, when we're talking about light and ventilation, I think we focus too poorly on areas which are to be having light and ventilation. Like, for instance, our living spaces are requiring a lot of light and ventilation and things like that. Our other areas like staircase and lifts and lobbies really don't require, but with the way the regulations have been kind of framed, we'll end up putting our staircases, our toilets and everything on the outside because of some silly regulation that is there in place. Now, this is something that drove me crazy some time back, and I almost got down to writing letters to the Prime Minister of India saying that, this is a big problem. You can't have regulations which say that a small toilet also needs to be on the exterior face of the building, and that does not happen anywhere in any part of the world. When we're building high-rises, especially, we want the core to kind of take up the central role of supporting the entire building, and then we say that, you have these little arms projecting out because we want the toilets and the other little areas within our living spaces to be ventilated. When the world over, it works differently. So I think we need to change the approach from the policy making point of view, not from the municipal commissioners just supposed to follow some book that has come from above, but I want to go down to making the book, so we need to make changes in that book. That's what I'm saying. The Bible needs to change.
So, yeah, Saurabh.
I have one more point. I just remembered that after COVID, people have started asking about balconies every flat. Earlier we used to see no balconies in the buildings, but now every flat guy, even a smaller flat, they want a small balcony because they want to spend more time in the flat itself since they're working from home. So those kind of things have, come into the culture.
True, that's true. Even you go to any office premises, state of art, beautiful office premises, but in a lunchtime you observe, everybody comes down. Everybody wants to come down. They want to breathe the fresh air. They want to be in touch with the natural sun. So we are all born to be close to our nature. So we have to have that balance between, there's so much has been talked about the health and well-being. So much study and research has been going on. If they are saying if there's a good well-being in the office, the thriving goes up by 8 to 10%. Can you imagine if the thriving can go up by 8 to 10%? It will change everybody's profiteering business case, happiness quotient to a different level, So these are all the things. So just to quickly conclude, if somebody really gives me a voice to be there in the position of a policymaker, 3 things I would like to say. As Saurabh as Soyuz very correctly said, flexibility. You cannot have a generic, strong, she'll agree with me, very strong DC rule. DC rule cannot be applied right across the city. In Mumbai, there are 221 wards. Every ward has a peculiar difficult problems. You can't say these 10 rules can govern all 221 wards. So there has to be a flexibility, which has to be a performance-based, case-specific based. And if any developer or architect is giving it back to the community, he should be incentivized. If any architect says, okay, while developing my plot, I'm going to give an access to my neighboring compound. I'm going to give this to my neighboring people. That's what is called urban renewal. They should be incentivized. We have to stop doing this plot-wise development. We have to make it mandatory to do a development precinct-wise. So appoint good 221 urban planners. Let them solve the problem of each ward. That should be the guideline for the development. For example, all the mills were sold with completely a green field, and you see if such a beautiful development could happen in city of Mumbai. I think that is thing. And third thing, reduce the current parking to 1/10. It's an insane, this parking requirement is driving us nowhere. Nowhere. Every person who's having 1,000 square foot of a house has 2-car parking, 800 square foot of a parking. Parking is good for a wealthy people, parking is good for the rich people, but you are making it mandatory in unified DCR. So many two-wheelers, I don't know that many two-wheelers are there in our country or not, but we are providing so much of a parking space which is going to remain empty and is going to become then mechanical, then puzzle, then whatnot. I think this needs to be talked on a separate topic together. Okay, for the paucity of time, I take a pause here. I will allow each one of you to say your concluding remark, not more than 1 minute. Then we'll open for a question answer. Anything that you want to tell the audience, guidelines, 1 minute, rapid fire.
I would like to say that, as I've always said, that in next 30 years, almost 70% of the population is going to be living in the metropolitan cities, main nodal cities. So we have to come together as a fraternity and seriously think about it, because we cannot go on expanding and taking the farmland. So we have to concentrate on the city itself, how to make it more dense and but still sustainable and livable, considering building modules and building mixed-use development kind of things can be worked out. So major planning of cities is very important, and it's a alarming thing that we have to all start thinking about.
Very, very well said. Compact and a thoughtful development. Very well said. Soyuz.
Okay, from my point of view, I think there is one major discord which is there that exists, which you pointed out at the end of your presentation, which is the discord between probably building high-rise, which is an aspirational and affluence-oriented thing, something that is an aspirational thing of people, and vis-a-vis sustainability, which is driving things in the other direction, where we want to kind of maximize our resources and we want to build sustainable housing from an architectural perspective. So those are two discords that exist between high-rise and actually sustainable architecture. But it's not that high-rise is not sustainable, like you mentioned at the end of it, because it has so many other advantages that probably we're looking at. So I think from that perspective, I would say that we need to build high-rise that is sustainable at the same time. That's what I would say.
Super, super, super.
I would change the topic. I would just talk about fire. Basically, now the CFO norms have got openable windows, which if you have a high-rise building, it is very difficult to even reach that spot. You know, he talks about openable windows on the outside, inside, he wants a handle, which is not possible.
Just not doable.
So I think it is better that, we all go, like we should have a collective call, like the architects, developers, we need to have a collective call and change the policy for high-rise. Like if it is a 50-meter building, it's fine, but not for a 200-meter building. It's not possible. So that also has a life safety issue, because your hardwares can't be maintained, like I said. So that's another possibility that after 10 years, things start failing and windows start coming off the building. So
True, and that's what we should do collectively. You were part of our initiative with Warik sir, and we made some changes. I think it's so important that, especially for the young minds, please shout out anything and everything that you feel needs to be changed. We have to build the positive, nice, inclusive pressure from the bottom, where it's for us. We should not feel shy to come together for a better cause. Very well said.
There is always one thing which is pinching in my shoe is codal compliance.
True.
Always, which you have asked me to do it. Basically, problem is, some days back I have attended Alpha Set seminar, and he's saying when his father was working and he was earning huge amount of money, but he has to pay 93% of income tax. When income tax has been brought down to 30%, compliance has increased substantially. My issue is same thing. Now new codes knocking on my door. These 24 codes are knocking on my door. One code is already out, which is tall building code. And tall building definition as per codal people is 50 meters and above. So everything is tall building. That is one thing. Then my IS 456 code, all are architects, so I am, giving some red signal. This IS 456, initially it was 120 pages. Now new IS code will be 1,400 pages. Then 18933 earthquake code, it was one single small document. Now it's 11 documents. 13920, similarly 11 documents. Problem is like this, who is going to comply all these things? People who are complying, he will get through. People who are not complying, what is the fate? And our tall buildings, we are finding, it is very difficult that at least in Mumbai, we are complying the code. But if you go to anywhere outside the Mumbai, Mumbai is Mumbai metropolitan. Thana, I'm not saying everybody is doing it, but Thana, New Mumbai, everywhere, this particular code, this high-rise committee is not there. And anybody and everybody can design building having a height of 250 meters and no compliance is there. So we have to see, as an architect, as a structural consultant, everybody, how we can include the compliance. Basically, high-rise building, why high-rise building is problematic? One small area, because it's a highly loaded structure, small problem will fail and there is a big problem in the structure. If one column is giving some crack, how you are going to, nobody is going to go up also. One small fire, nobody is ready to leave or go out. So one has to do it. And that is my submission to every architect who is related to the residential and commercial building. We have to see to it that go to the committee, go to the highest committee, the Indian Standard Committee, see that code has to be simplified as possible, as much as possible, and see that compliance is there. Codes is not taught in any colleges, but we say that everybody should know the code, how it can be.
True, true. Very well said. So I will just take one question. If anybody has one question, then all of you should feel free to meet the panelists over a period of remaining day and ask them a question. But if anyone has one quick question, we take and we close the session. Yes, please give her a mic. You tell us whom do you want to address the question and give brief introduction of yourself.
So, is this on?
Yeah, it's on.
So I'm Medini, I'm an architect. I represent a developer, so don't look at me in a
You're the
different
most important person here. The most important person here.
Yeah. So as Sir rightly said, we are looking at FSI consumption all the time. Okay, my question to you is, like for the whole panel, we are talking about a high-rise environment for a livable tomorrow. Now you see that there is so much of redevelopment happening all over Mumbai now. What happens in terms of redevelopment of these high-rise buildings that we are building tomorrow? Do we look at that, bringing down the building and creating a carbon footprint, or do we look at repurposing the building, reusing, repurposing? And for young architects, what do they do now while designing these buildings so that they can be reused or repurposed? We have seen that commercial buildings, the office buildings are empty these days because of the hybrid kind of working environment. So what is your advice and what would Watve sir suggest while designing such buildings?
So I will take this and voice all my four panelists, because all of four of them, they said that. Saurabh began very well saying that design a building which is flexible. He used that word 3 times in his opening remark. Don't make a rigid building so that it can be repurposed. Watve said we'll build a building which is robust, which will have kind of an indexation where even if you repurpose it will withstand. Suresh said that the envelope will have life, it has to be maintained every 5 years, hardware has to be seen, and so on. And Soyuz also touched upon that point. But yes, you are very right. Whatever we do today is not going to be static, it's going to become very dynamic. So every square foot that we build, we must see the life cycle of that particular built environment, and there has to be opportunity for repurposing or reusing it. Good question, but it's a subjective question. We'll talk over a lunch. Thank you very much, everyone. Thanks for being here, and wish you all the best.